If I ever write a memoir, it'll be called How to Fix Everything Except Your Marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me as I crouched under our kitchen sink at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, wrestling with a stubborn pipe joint that had been dripping for weeks. Water pooled around my knees, soaking through my work pants, while upstairs my wife Janelle was probably already asleep, or pretending to be. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The house felt different these days. Empty, despite both of us living in it. Our daughter Emma had left for Boston University 6 months ago, and without her laughter echoing through the hallways, the silence between Janelle and me had become deafening. We moved around each other like polite strangers, sharing space, but not much else. I tightened the wrench one final time and heard the satisfying click of metal against metal. The dripping stopped. At least something in this house still responded to my touch. Adrian? Janelle's voice drifted down from upstairs. Are you still working on that? Just finished, I called back, wiping my hands on an old towel. Sorry if I woke you. You didn't. I was just getting home. Just getting home? I glanced at the kitchen clock. It was nearly midnight. Janelle worked as an event strategist for a boutique planning company downtown, but since when did client meetings run this late on a Tuesday? I climbed the stairs, my work boots heavy on the wooden steps. The house was a 1960s colonial in Newton, nothing fancy, but solid. I'd spent the last 15 years maintaining every inch of it, from the foundation to the roof shingles. As a structural planner for the city, I understood the importance of a strong foundation. Too bad I couldn't say the same about my marriage. Janelle was in our bedroom, standing in front of the full-length mirror, removing her earrings. She looked polished, professional, beautiful, and completely exhausted. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a sleek bun, and she wore a charcoal gray dress I'd never seen before. New dress? I asked, sitting on the edge of our bed to unlace my boots. This old thing? I've had it forever. She didn't meet my eyes in the mirror. I wanted to point out that I'd been married to her for 18 years and had never seen that particular dress, but I was too tired to start an argument. Instead, I noticed something glinting on my nightstand. A watch. Expensive looking, with a thick silver band and a face that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Whose watch is this? I picked it up, feeling the weight of quality craftsmanship. Janelle glanced over, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Panic? Guilt? It was gone so quickly I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Oh, that! She laughed, but it sounded forced. My coworker dropped it at work today. I offered to return it to him tomorrow. Must be some coworker. This is a Rolex. Is it? I wouldn't know. I just grabbed it off his desk when he wasn't looking. She turned away from the mirror, smoothing down her dress. You know how absent-minded Martin can be. Martin. I'd heard that name before. Martin Kessler, Janelle's supervisor. Mid-40s, divorced? No, wait. Recently remarried, according to Janelle. She'd mentioned him in passing over dinner a few months ago. Something about him being promoted to regional director. Right, I said, setting the watch back down. Because nothing screams lost and found like a $5,000 timepiece next to my mouthguard. Janelle shot me a look. Since when are you an expert on luxury watches? Since I spent 3 years working construction before I got my engineering degree. You pick up a few things about what rich guys wear when you're building their houses. She disappeared into our walk-in closet, and I heard the rustle of clothes being changed. When she emerged, she was wearing an old college t-shirt and pajama pants. The Janelle I used to know. The one who used to curl up next to me on the couch and steal bites of my dinner. The one who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and tell me about her day without checking her phone every 5 minutes. I'm exhausted, she said, sliding under the covers. Good night, Adrian. Good night. I lay awake for a long time after her breathing evened out, staring at that watch on my nightstand. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, like a building with a crack in its foundation that everyone ignores until the whole structure comes crashing down. The next morning, Janelle was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. Early meeting. Coffee's ready. Jay. I poured myself a cup and noticed the watch was gone from the nightstand. Of course it was. She'd returned it to the absent-minded Martin. But something nagged at me as I drove to work. In 18 years of marriage, Janelle had never once volunteered to return a lost item for a coworker. She barely remembered to return library books on time. And since when did she have early meetings? Her company didn't even open until 9. My office was in a gray concrete building downtown, the kind of place where dreams go to fade slowly under fluorescent lighting. As a structural planner for the city, I spent my days reviewing blueprints, inspecting construction sites, and making sure buildings didn't fall down on people. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid well and gave me the satisfaction of knowing I was keeping people safe. "You look like hell," said my colleague Dave Morrison, settling into the cubicle next to mine with a coffee that smelled significantly better than the office sludge. "Thanks for the pep talk." "Seriously, what's eating you? You've been distracted all week." I considered telling him about the watch, about Janelle's late nights and early mornings, about the growing distance between us. But Dave was recently divorced himself, and his bitterness toward his ex-wife colored every conversation about marriage. "Just tired," I said instead. "Emma called last night. She's thinking about changing her major again." "Kids," Dave shook his head. "Thank God mine are still young enough to think I'm a hero." I spent the morning reviewing plans for a new apartment complex in Cambridge, but my mind kept wandering. When lunch break came, I found myself Googling signs of infidelity on my phone like some pathetic cliché. The results were depressingly familiar. Working late, dressing differently, being secretive about phone calls and messages, emotional distance. Check, 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 and check. But suspicion wasn't proof. I needed facts. And if there's one thing my job had taught me, it was how to gather evidence methodically and document everything. That evening, I stopped at an electronics store on my way home. The teenage clerk looked bored until I explained what I needed. "Hidden camera, huh?" He perked up. "For security?" "Something like that." 20 minutes later, I walked out with a device the size of a thumb drive that could record high-definition video for up to 12 hours. The kid had also sold me a tiny SD card and explained how to set up motion-activated recording. "Just remember," he'd said with a grin, "whatever you're investigating, make sure you really want to know the truth." Janelle was already home when I arrived, sitting at the kitchen island with her laptop open and papers spread everywhere. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment, her smile seemed genuine. "How was your day?" she asked. "Same as always. Yours?" "Crazy busy. We're planning this huge corporate retreat for next month, and the client keeps changing their mind about everything." She gestured at the papers. "Martin thinks we should just tell them to pick a theme and stick with it. But you know how these finance guys are." Martin again. I set down my briefcase and loosened my tie. "Sounds frustrating." "It is, but Martin's been really supportive. He's actually coming over later to help me work through some of the logistics." "Here, tonight? Is that a problem? We'll just be working in the dining room. You probably won't even notice we're here." "Oh, I'd notice. I'd notice everything." "No problem," I said. "I've got some blueprints to review anyway. I'll be upstairs." An hour later, I was in our bedroom, carefully positioning the tiny camera inside a picture frame on Janelle's dresser. The angle was perfect. It would capture most of the room while being completely invisible. If I was wrong about my suspicions, I'd delete the footage and try to rebuild the trust in my marriage. If I was right, well, I'd deal with that when the time came. The doorbell rang at 8 o'clock sharp. I heard Janelle's heels clicking across the hardwood floor, heard the front door open, heard a man's voice saying, "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." "No worries. I've got everything set up in the dining room." I crept to the top of the stairs and peered down. Martin Kessler was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of confident smile that came from never having to worry about money. He was carrying a leather briefcase and a bottle of wine for a work meeting. "I brought a Pinot Noir," he said. "Figured we might need some liquid inspiration." Janelle laughed. "You know me so well." They disappeared into the dining room, and I heard the clink of glasses, the rustle of papers, the low murmur of conversation. I tried to focus on the structural plans spread across my desk, but every laugh from downstairs felt like a knife twisting in my chest. At 10:30, I heard Martin say, "We should probably call it a night. Early morning tomorrow." "Of course. Let me walk you out." More murmured conversation by the front door, then the sound of his car starting in our driveway. Janelle came upstairs a few minutes later, slightly flushed from the wine. "How did it go?" I asked. "Really well. Martin has some great ideas for the retreat. I think the client's going to love what we've put together." She kissed my cheek, a quick, perfunctory peck, and headed for the bathroom. "I'm going to take a quick shower and then head to bed. I'm exhausted." I waited until I heard the water running, then checked the camera. The motion sensor had activated at 9:47 p.m. when Janelle had come upstairs to use the bathroom. Nothing suspicious there. But as I lay in bed that night, listening to Janelle's steady breathing, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. The watch, the late nights, the wine, the way Martin had looked at my wife, it all added up to something I wasn't ready to face. The camera would tell me the truth. I just had to be patient. 3 days later, I had my answer. I'd been checking the camera every morning after Janelle left for work, finding nothing but routine footage of us getting dressed, sleeping, and going about our normal evening routines. I was starting to think I'd let my paranoia get the better of me. Then Thursday morning arrived. I'd worked late the night before, reviewing emergency repairs on a bridge in Somerville. When I got home around midnight, Janelle was already asleep. I'd been too tired to check the camera, so I waited until Friday morning when she left for another one of her early meetings. The timestamp showed activity at 11:23 p.m. Thursday night, about 20 minutes after I'd fallen asleep. My hands shook as I transferred the file to my laptop. The video quality was crystal clear, and what I saw made my stomach drop through the floor. Janelle entering our bedroom, but she wasn't alone. Martin Kessler followed behind her, his tie already loosened, her hand in his. They were laughing about something, whispering like teenagers sneaking around. "Are you sure he's asleep?" Martin asked, glancing toward my side of the bed where I was completely unconscious. "Gone to the world," Janelle replied. "He worked until midnight and took a sleeping pill. He could sleep through an earthquake." I watched in horror as my wife of 18 years brought another man into our bedroom, into our bed, while I slept 3 feet away. The betrayal was so complete, so brazen, that I couldn't process it at first. But it got worse. As they settled onto Janelle's side of the bed, I heard Martin say, "This is crazy. What if he wakes up?" "He won't. Besides, Adrian's so oblivious these days. I could probably have an affair right under his nose, and he'd never notice." They both laughed at that. At me? At my supposed stupidity? "Poor guy," Martin said, not sounding sorry at all. Working his little engineering job, fixing pipes, completely clueless that his wife is getting her needs met elsewhere. "Don't feel too bad for him," Janelle replied. "Adrian's become so boring. All he talks about is work and Emma's college expenses. When's the last time he surprised me with anything? When's the last time he made me feel desirable?" "His loss is my gain," Martin said, and then the footage became too painful to watch. I slammed the laptop shut and ran to the bathroom, where I vomited until there was nothing left in my stomach. 18 years of marriage. 18 years of building a life together, of supporting each other through good times and bad, of creating a family and a home. And she'd thrown it all away for her boss and his expensive watch. But as I sat on the bathroom floor, my initial shock and devastation began to crystallize into something else. Something cold and calculating. Something that felt a lot like rage, but controlled. Methodical. If Janelle thought I was oblivious, she was about to learn just how wrong she could be. I spent the rest of the day planning. Not an emotional, destructive plan born of hurt feelings, but a systematic approach to gathering evidence and protecting my interests. I was a structural engineer, after all. I knew how to identify weak points and exploit them. First, I copied all the video files to multiple locations, my personal laptop, a secure cloud account, and a thumb drive I locked in my desk drawer at work. Then I began documenting everything: dates, times, phone records, credit card statements, anything that might establish a pattern of deception. Janelle's phone bill showed dozens of late-night texts to Martin's number. Her credit card revealed charges at expensive restaurants on days when she'd told me she was working through lunch. Hotel charges during supposed business trips that I cross-referenced with her company's travel calendar, trips that didn't exist. The evidence painted a clear picture of an affair that had been going on for months, maybe longer. But I needed more than just proof of infidelity. I needed leverage. That's when I remembered something Janelle had mentioned months ago. Martin was her direct supervisor. Most companies had strict policies about romantic relationships between managers and their subordinates. If Martin was married, as Janelle had said, that added another layer of complication. I spent my lunch break researching Janelle's company online. Their employee handbook was publicly available, and sure enough, Section 4.7 clearly stated that romantic relationships between supervisors and direct reports were prohibited and could result in immediate termination for both parties. Martin's LinkedIn profile confirmed he was married to someone named Alyssa Kessler, a real estate attorney who looked like she didn't suffer fools gladly. Her firm's website listed her specialties as divorce, law, and asset protection. Perfect. By the time I drove home that evening, I had a plan. It wasn't about revenge exactly. It was about justice, about making sure the people who had betrayed me faced appropriate consequences for their actions, about protecting myself financially and emotionally from further damage. Janelle was in the kitchen when I walked in, preparing what looked like an elaborate dinner. She was wearing a new dress, another one I'd never seen before, and she'd done something different with her hair. "You're home early," she said, not looking up from the stove. "Finished my reports ahead of schedule. Something smells good." "Coq au vin. I thought we could have a nice dinner together. We haven't done that in a while." The irony was staggering. After months of emotional distance and lies, after bringing her lover into our bed, she wanted to play house and pretend we were a happy couple. "That sounds wonderful," I said, and I meant it. Let her think everything was normal. Let her believe I was still the oblivious husband she could manipulate and deceive. It would make what came next so much more satisfying. Over dinner, Janelle was more attentive than she'd been in months. She asked about my day, laughed at my stories, even reached across the table to touch my hand. If I hadn't seen the footage, I might have been fooled into thinking we were reconnecting. "I've been thinking," she said as we finished our wine. "Maybe we should plan a trip somewhere, just the two of us. We could go to that bed and breakfast in Vermont you mentioned." "That sounds nice. When were you thinking?" "Maybe next month? I'll have to check my schedule, make sure I don't have any conflicts with work." Work? With Martin, the man she was sleeping with while I lay unconscious 3 feet away. "Of course," I said. "Take all the time you need to coordinate with your colleagues." She smiled, completely missing the edge in my voice. "I love you, Adrian. I know things have been difficult lately, but I want us to work through this." "So do I replied. And for the first time in days, I was telling the truth. I did want us to work through this, just not in the way she imagined. That night, as Janelle slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake finalizing my strategy. Tomorrow was Saturday. I'd spend the weekend preparing my evidence packages, consulting with a divorce attorney, and setting up meetings with the appropriate parties. By Monday morning, Janelle's carefully constructed world of lies and deception would begin to crumble. And unlike the buildings I inspected for structural damage, there would be no way to repair the foundation once it collapsed. I woke up Saturday morning with the kind of clarity that comes from having a purpose. Janelle was still sleeping, her auburn hair spread across the pillow, looking peaceful and innocent. Amazing how appearances could deceive. She stirred as I got out of bed. "Where are you going? It's Saturday." "Just going for a run. I'll be back in a couple hours." "Okay, I might go shopping with Lisa later. Girls' Day." Lisa, her sister. I wondered if Lisa knew about Martin, or if she was just another person Janelle was lying to. "Have fun," I said, kissing her forehead. The gesture felt like closing a coffin lid. My first stop wasn't a run. It was the law office of Patricia Chen, a divorce attorney I'd found online who specialized in high-asset cases involving infidelity. She'd agreed to meet me on a Saturday morning, which told me everything I needed to know about her dedication to her clients. Her office was in a converted brownstone in Back Bay, all dark wood and leather-bound law books. Patricia herself was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. "Mr. Falk, thank you for coming in. I understand you have a delicate situation." That's one way to put it. I opened my briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. My wife is having an affair with her boss. I have video evidence, phone records, credit card statements, and documentation of company policy violations. Patricia raised an eyebrow as she flipped through the materials. "This is very thorough. How long has this been going on?" "Based on what I can document, at least 6 months, possibly longer." "And you're certain you want to proceed with divorce?" I thought about Janelle's performance last night, her talk of Vermont getaways and working through our problems, all while planning her next rendezvous with Martin. I'm certain. For the next hour, Patricia walked me through my options. Massachusetts was a no-fault divorce state, but adultery could still impact property division and alimony. With my documentation, she was confident we could protect my assets and ensure a favorable settlement. "I'll need you to gather financial records going back 3 years," she said. "Bank statements, investment accounts, retirement funds, everything. And I want to file a motion to freeze your joint accounts as soon as possible." "Already done." I handed her another folder. "I've been preparing for this conversation." She smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "Mr. Falk, I think we're going to work very well together." My next stop was FedEx, where I prepared 3 identical packages. Each contained printed screenshots from the video footage, a timeline of the affair, and copies of relevant company policies. The first package was addressed to Human Resources at Janelle's company. The second went to Alyssa Kessler at her law firm. The third was for my own records. I scheduled all 3 for Monday morning delivery. Then I drove to the bank and followed Patricia's advice about freezing our joint accounts. As Janelle's husband, I had every legal right to protect our marital assets from being dissipated during an affair. The bank manager was sympathetic and efficient. "I'm sorry you're going through this, Mr. Falk," she said as she processed the paperwork, "but you're smart to protect yourself financially." By the time I returned home, Janelle was gone shopping with Lisa. I used the opportunity to change the passwords on all our shared accounts and remove her access to our joint credit cards. I also called our cell phone provider and requested detailed records for both our lines. When Janelle came home that evening, loaded down with shopping bags, she was in an excellent mood. "I found the most amazing dress for the company holiday party next week," she said, pulling out a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. "Martin thinks it's important for the team to make a good impression with the new clients." Martin thinks. Of course he did. "It's beautiful," I said. "I'm sure you'll be the most stunning woman there." She beamed at the compliment, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd just confirmed she was still actively planning her affair. The holiday party would be the perfect opportunity for her and Martin to play their roles as professional colleagues while everyone else remained ignorant of their relationship. Too bad neither of them would have jobs by then. Sunday passed quietly. Janelle spent most of the day on her laptop, claiming to work on client proposals. I noticed she was texting frequently, always angling her phone away from me. Every message was probably from Martin, planning their next encounter. That evening, as we watched a movie together on the couch, Janelle curled up against my side like she used to do when we were newlyweds. The gesture should have melted my heart. Instead, it made my skin crawl. "Adrian," she said during a commercial break. "Yeah? I know I've been distracted lately with work and everything, but I want you to know how much I appreciate you, how much I love our life together." The audacity was breathtaking. She was literally planning to betray me while telling me how much she loved our life. "I love you too," I said, because what else could I say? In a few hours, her world would start collapsing, and there would be plenty of time for truth then. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, typical for November in Boston. Janelle left for work at her usual time, kissing me goodbye and promising to cook my favorite dinner that night. "It's going to be a busy day," she said. Martin scheduled back-to-back meetings all afternoon. I bet he did. At exactly 9 a.m., I called Janelle's company and asked to speak with the HR director. I'd researched the company thoroughly and knew that Sarah Williams had been in charge of human resources for 5 years. She had a reputation for taking policy violations seriously. "Ms. Williams, my name is Adrian Falk. I believe you'll be receiving a package this morning regarding a serious policy violation involving 2 of your employees." "I see. Can you give me more details?" "My wife, Janelle Falk, is having an affair with her direct supervisor, Martin Kessler. I have video evidence and documentation showing this relationship has been ongoing for months. As you'll see in the materials I've sent, this violates your company's policy regarding supervisor-subordinate relationships." There was a long pause. "Mr. Falk, these are very serious allegations." "Yes, they are, and I have very serious evidence to support them." "I'll review the materials as soon as they arrive and conduct a full investigation. Thank you for bringing this to our attention." At 10 a.m., I called Alyssa Kessler's law firm. Her assistant tried to screen the call, but I was persistent. "Please tell Ms. Kessler that I have information about her husband's extramarital affair. I think she'll want to speak with me." 2 minutes later, Alyssa was on the line. Her voice was crisp, professional, and ice cold. "Mr. Falk, I understand you have some concerns about my husband. I have proof that your husband is having an affair with my wife. Video evidence, actually. I've sent you a package with all the details." Another pause, longer this time. When Alyssa spoke again, her voice had dropped several degrees. "I see. And what exactly are you hoping to accomplish by contacting me?" "I thought you deserved to know the truth. What you do with that information is entirely up to you. I appreciate your consideration. I'll review the materials and be in touch if I have any questions." The rest of the day crawled by. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering to what was happening across town. By now, both packages had been delivered. HR was probably reviewing the evidence. Alyssa was probably calling her own investigators. And Janelle and Martin had no idea their carefully constructed secret was about to explode in their faces. At 3:47 p.m., my phone rang. Janelle's number. "Adrian?" Her voice was shaky, panicked. "Can you come pick me up? Something's happened at work." "What kind of something?" "I can't explain over the phone. Please, just come get me. I'm in the parking garage." I found her sitting on a concrete barrier in the dim underground garage, still in her work clothes but looking completely disheveled. Her makeup was smeared, and she'd been crying. "What happened?" I asked, though I already knew. HR called me and Martin into a meeting. They had pictures, Adrian. Pictures of us together. Someone's been watching us, following us. They fired us both on the spot. "Pictures of you together? What kind of pictures?" She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "You know what kind?" For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She looked so small and broken. Nothing like the confident woman who'd been lying to my face for months. "Who would do this to us?" she whispered. Who would destroy our lives like this? I knelt down in front of her, taking her hands in mine. They were ice cold. I don't know, Janelle, but maybe it's time we talked about what's really been going on in our marriage. She started crying again, and I held her while she sobbed in the parking garage. To anyone watching, we probably looked like a couple comforting each other through a crisis. They had no idea they were watching the final scene of an 18-year marriage. The drive home was silent, except for Janelle's occasional sniffles. She stared out the passenger window, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. She was probably trying to figure out how much I knew, how much she could still salvage with the right explanation. When we got inside, she went straight to the kitchen and poured herself a large glass of wine. Her hands were still shaking. Adrian, we need to talk. I agree. She sat down at the kitchen island, the same spot where she'd been planning her fake corporate retreat with Martin just a week ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Okay. She took a deep breath, composing herself. Even in crisis, Janelle was calculating her approach. Martin and we've been having an affair. It started about 6 months ago. It wasn't planned, it just happened. We were working late on a project, and one thing led to another. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Go on. I know it was wrong. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. But our marriage has been struggling for a while, Adrian. We've been more like roommates than husband and wife. I felt lonely, neglected. Martin made me feel desired again. So this is my fault? No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying our marriage had problems, and instead of addressing them, I made a terrible mistake. But it's over now. Martin and I are both fired, and his wife knows everything. It's finished. I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. What I saw instead was calculation. She was trying to minimize the damage, control the narrative. How do you know his wife knows? HR told us. Apparently, someone sent her the same evidence they sent to the company, photos, documents, everything. She shuddered. It was humiliating, Adrian, sitting in that conference room while they laid out our entire relationship like evidence in a criminal trial. That must have been difficult. It was horrible, but maybe it's for the best. Maybe this is the wake-up call we needed to fix our marriage. There it was. Even after being caught red-handed, even after losing her job and destroying another marriage, she was still trying to manipulate the situation, still trying to make me the villain who drove her into another man's arms. Janelle, I have a question for you. Okay. The night you brought Martin to our house, when you thought I was asleep, what did you say about me? The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? You said I was oblivious, that you could have an affair right under my nose and I'd never notice. You both laughed about how boring I was, how clueless. She stared at me in horror. How could you possibly know that? I pulled out my phone and showed her the video file. Because I wasn't as oblivious as you thought. The wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the kitchen floor, red liquid spreading across the white tiles. You recorded us? In our bedroom? I recorded my bedroom, yes, after I found Martin's watch on my nightstand and you lied about how it got there. Adrian, I can explain. You already did. 6 months of explanations, actually. Late meetings, business trips, early mornings. Very creative. She stood up, backing away from me. You're the one who put cameras in our house. Oh, you're the one who sent those photos to destroy our careers. I'm the one who documented my wife's affair, yes. What did you expect me to do when I found out? Pretend it wasn't happening? You could have talked to me. We could have worked through this. Like we worked through your loneliness. Like we worked through your feeling neglected. You didn't come to me with those problems, Janelle. You went to Martin. She was crying again, but this time it felt different. Not the calculated tears of someone trying to manipulate a situation, but the genuine anguish of someone whose world was collapsing. What happens now? She whispered. I pulled out a manila envelope from my briefcase. Now you get served with divorce papers. Her legs gave out, and she sank into one of the kitchen chairs. You've already filed. This morning. My attorney will be in touch with you about asset division and custody arrangements for Emma. Custody? Emma's 18. Financial support. College expenses. She'll need to know why her parents are getting divorced. You can't tell her about this. Please, Adrian, don't destroy her image of me. I won't have to tell her anything. You did that yourself the moment you brought your lover into our home. The next few hours were a blur of logistics. I helped Janelle pack some clothes and personal items while she made phone calls to find a place to stay. Her sister Lisa was out of town, and most of her friends were mutual friends who would inevitably take sides once the truth came out. She ended up calling Martin. He's staying at a hotel downtown, she said after hanging up. His wife changed the locks and froze their accounts. Smart woman. Adrian, please? Can't we try counseling? Can't we try to save this? I looked at her, really looked at her for what I knew would be the last time as my wife. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago. But the trust was gone, shattered as completely as the wine glass on our kitchen floor. You made your choice 6 months ago, I said. Now you get to live with the consequences. She left that evening with 2 suitcases and a broken marriage in her wake. I watched from the living room window as she loaded her car, then drove away into the November darkness. The house felt different with her gone, not empty exactly, but clean, like a building that had been stripped down to its foundation, ready to be rebuilt into something stronger. My phone rang around 9 o'clock. Emma, calling from her dorm room. Dad? Mom called me crying. She said you guys are getting divorced. What's going on? I closed my eyes, trying to find the right words. Your mother and I are having some serious problems, sweetheart. We're going to try to work through them, but it might take some time. Is there someone else? Is one of you cheating? Smart girl. Too smart? That's between your mother and me. What's important is that we both love you very much, and this doesn't change anything about that. Dad, I'm not a kid anymore. You can tell me the truth. The truth is that marriage is complicated, and sometimes people make mistakes that can't be undone. Your mother made some choices that hurt our relationship very badly. There was a long pause. I'm coming home this weekend. You don't have to do that, Em. Focus on your studies. I'm coming home, she said firmly. My family is falling apart. I should be there. After we hung up, I poured myself a drink and sat in my empty house, thinking about the past week. A part of me wondered if I'd been too harsh, too calculating in my revenge. But then I remembered the footage of Janelle and Martin mocking me, laughing about my obliviousness while they betrayed me in my own bed. Some foundations, once cracked, could never be repaired. The only option was to tear them down and start over. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mr. Falk, this is Alyssa Kessler. Thank you for the information about my husband. I thought you should know that Martin will be facing additional consequences beyond just losing his job. My investigators found evidence of expense account fraud and tax evasion. He'll likely be facing criminal charges. I hope you find some satisfaction in knowing that justice is being served. I did find satisfaction in that, not because I was vindictive, but because actions had consequences. Choices had prices, and sometimes the people who thought they were too smart to get caught discovered they weren't as clever as they believed.